Hello, Silva Squad. So today we're going to be talking about an interview that the California City Police Chief, John Walker, gave. This was with a journalist. I have linked the full interview down below. The full one was on their website, but obviously they did like some condensed ones or whatever. So what I want to do is just talk about some of the things that came up in there, some of the things that stuck out, give my opinion on them, and go from there. Now, he does say, yes, we are following every lead. We've searched multiple places. We've interviewed tons of people. We've done everything that is coming down the pipeline and are continuing to do, but so far nothing is showing us what happened to these boys or where they went. Now, this part I find to be very interesting. He says there has to be someone out there that knows what happened to them. And when she presses a little bit further, he says, yes, someone knows. He's like, you know what? I do not think that these boys just walked out of the house and disappeared. Well, that's where I was like, isn't that kind of what the adopted parents are essentially saying happened? I mean, they didn't say for sure, but the kids basically disappeared out of the backyard according to them in moments. So, there's that. So I think it's interesting that he's saying someone knows what happened to them. They didn't just walk out of the house on their own and disappear. Now, on the note of the adopted parents, he says, yes, we are in contact with them. They have made themselves very available anytime we need to talk to them. Now, another thing that I thought that he said was interesting was, like we heard, the adopted parents were the last people to have seen these boys December 21st. Now, he does say later on, like, we've gotten leads and, tips from people saying they might have spotted them here or this or that or whatever, but that none of those have panned out. Now, when the reporter asked him, okay, look, prior to December 21st, who, where, when, why, how is the last sighting of them? And he kind of stumbled over that a little bit. There was no real definitive answer. But now, isn't that kind of how we all feel watching all these different interviews, that AV has been doing with these different people, former neighbors, stuff like that? It's really hard to pinpoint, like, okay, well, who has actually seen these boys and where? Now, we had the one lady given the September 23rd date, but that's a hot minute ago. Now, another point of interest is he says, look, we still have hours of security cam footage, from the neighborhood to go through. Very interesting. We also have hours of police body cam footage to go through. Very interesting. We're going to sofa sidebar that here in just a second. And also they have interviews and stuff to go through. So here's my, 2 cents from the sofa on that sofa sidebar. So first of all, that's the biggest thing we've all been like, have you seen AV's channel? Have you been watching The Neighbor? It also makes me wonder, are there other neighbors with other footage that they're not letting us know about, whatever. So there's that. Clearly, there's hours worth of footage to go through. We've just seen little condensed versions of it. I'm sure they're going to fine-tooth comb. Let me say this. I would hope they are fine-tooth combing every bit of that footage, start to finish, top to damn bottom. Now, also when he said this, when he's like, we have hours of body cam footage to go through. Okay, right off the rip, this is what I thought. Okay, sofa sidebar on this again. For those that are familiar with the Cortny, Belle and the Christopher McNabb trial, if you're not, I'm getting ready to do a video on that trial or whatever. I'll link an article below so you can get caught up with it, and then you can join me when I do that video. But anyways, that was another case where they looked at the body cam stuff and the interviews on the body cam of them talking to Christopher McNabb and Cortny Belle. And there was so much incriminating evidence on that. So it really makes me wonder. As soon as I heard them saying that, I was like, oh, I bet they're going over conversations, walking through the thing, reactions, stuff like that. Like, we haven't seen that yet. And so it's really making me wonder, are they able to take that body cam footage and then go with the other footage from the neighbors? We know the one neighbor's with footage. Is there other neighbors with that? And piece together stories. Number two, just to see, like, okay, how are these people interacting with us? Because these people were talking with them up close, one-on-one, that kind of thing. We saw that interview with them, which didn't really go over that well. But I'm curious to see what kind of mannerisms, what kind of behavior, what kind of vibe were they serving on the body cam footage from the police. Then obviously interviews. So my hopes, my wishes, my prayers for that whole little trio, neighbors footage, body cam footage, and interviews, is that they are all, cross-referencing all of that and either being like, that doesn't pass the vibe check, or, okay, well, you know, we can say A, B, and C now and this makes sense. I don't know. We're going to have to stay tuned. Now, the reporter also asked about, you know, vandalizing being done to the home, and he confirms, yeah, you know what? There was some stuff done to the house. Some things were boarded up. And she's like, you know, did the police pay for that? That was one of the rumors going on. And we're going to talk about some of the rumor stuff here in a minute. And he's like, no, we didn't pay for that. You know, there was a little discrepancy because he was like, I think it's just one window. And she's like, I've been there a little bit more recently, and it's all the windows. Regardless, he acknowledges this and goes into it. He doesn't say specifically, you know, like we arrested somebody or whatever, but, you know, it is what it is. That's out there on the table. Now, he does say, yes, the couple, Trezell, Jacqueline West, they are not staying in the house right now. They are staying in Bakersfield. He would not say where they were staying for security reasons, that kind of thing. So he was like, yeah, they are not staying in the house. And he says they have been there. You know, he's like, I think they stopped in a couple of times to pick up some things. Now, yes, that does kind of strike us as a little bit weird, you know, because I'm like, isn't that like a crime scene possibly or whatever? But I'm hoping that they had already cleared the whole scene and they're done with it, you know, and that's why they're at this point of, no, they can come and go as they want. He did say, you know what, there's not much activity there. We're kind of like dropping in on the place, and, you know, I haven't really seen them there, he says. So, you know, we'll go with that. Now, in regards to evidence, he wasn't going to budge and give any kind of inkling as to exactly what they took. We already know at one point they took their phones because Trezell said so, you know, in that interview, so we know that. But I mean, they were carrying out way more bags than that and bigger bags and whatnot. So she presses him a little bit, and he's like, yeah, you know what, we took out a lot of evidence. We took evidence from the backyard, from the house, from the little, you know, shed they had out back, from the clearing. So from all different areas. And again, he wouldn't go into it, but I would love to know what was in those bags. Now, another thing he confirms is she's like, you know, because, you know, remains and stuff have been found during the search and that kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, none of that stuff. This is not the boys, you know, as of this recording and as of his interview at least. So, you know, he put that to squash. He's like, nope, that's not them. Now, she also asked him, she kind of like presses a little bit, you know, how many agencies are here, you know, working on this case now? You know, how many officers do you have there at your, you know, department, at this jurisdiction or whatever? And he says, look, you know what, we have 2 agencies working with us now. There were, I think, 4 before, the FBI in Bakersfield. And so they've been assisting, and I think he said Kern County helped out with some stuff recently too. But then he says that he has 13 sworn officers at his place. And I was like, my God. The gravity of how desolate and small this area is, it just does not sink in with me. You know, where I think what was the population of California City, like 15,000. So I'm like, okay, that's like a cop per 1,000 people. You know, I don't know what the ratio normally is or whatever. But, you know, I just hope that these other agencies stay on it, because it just seems like, wow, this place is like out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and there's just 13 dudes. I mean, what else? I mean, like, what happens if something else happens in this town? I'm sure this is like a major thing for them, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad to see other agencies involved. I'm glad to see, you know, AV out there doing his thing, and just everyone who's been out there searching and helping and finding, you know, trying to find out where are the boys. Another thing that was interesting is he's saying, you know what, I know that there's private investigators and people like that out there on the case, and he's like, we welcome that. We welcome everybody bringing anything that they can. And he just asked, you know, he's like, look, you know, just, you know, give us the information that you find and don't impede in our investigation. So I thought that was interesting that that was brought out and said. You know, I'm not out there on the ground, so I don't know what kind of interaction is really going on. You know, we know that one private investigator was like, look, you know, he said he doesn't, you know, want me out here and and he quit following that lead or whatever. So that was going on. So I'm just curious, like, what is there friction going on out there, you know, on the ground that we're not seeing? Now, the reporter says, you know what, are we in fear of this like turn into a cold case? Because I mean, it's been 30 days. And he's like, absolutely not. We are still actively working this case. You know, we have all this stuff to go through. that's not going to happen. And, you know, he says, look, we have like 8 cold cases, I believe he said, revolved around like missing people, some of them stretching back all the way 20 years. He said, we actually have one person whose sole job it is to work on those cases. They're like a retired crime analyst, and that's what they do. And so it's not like if this starts going cold, it's just gonna, you know, whatever. But he made it sound like they still had all the stuff that they could be going through. So, I mean, I hope so. I hope that's true. I hope we're not seeing the signs of this going cold. Now let's get down to the tea. Now when they started talking about, let's, you know, address some of these rumors and all that, I was like, okay, let me pull my chair up, you know, let me clean my ears out a little bit. And I'm just gonna have to say this, I mean, any and all answers or somewhat answers are welcome, you know what I mean? I mean, we all want that, but I just felt like, there's like 10,000 other questions I would have asked. So first things first, like I said earlier, he's like, yeah, you know what? The adopted parents, they're not living in that house. They're in Bakersfield. He will not say where they're at. And she's like, were they ever in protective custody? Were you ever like hiding them out or whatever? And he's like, nope, that was not a thing. You know, so that's not true. Now, the next thing I thought was also very interesting. She's like, look, you know, first of all, have you searched everywhere in this house? You know, is there anywhere in the house that these boys could be? And he insists, he's like, nope. Every kind of dog you can imagine, cadaver dog, this dog, that dog, has been out there. They have not hit on any of those scents, which I think that in itself is interesting. But regardless, he's like, no, we have searched high and low. And then she goes more in depth, you know, she's like, look, you know, is there any like hidden rooms? Have you looked under the floor, all this stuff? And as far as hidden room goes, he's like, no, I mean, we've looked everywhere in that house. He's like, they were only there for 3 months. So, I mean, they wouldn't really have time to have built anything. And I'm like, well, you ain't never seen somebody who's desperate to hide. But then he also says he doesn't really firmly answer something when she's like, have you looked under the floor? Have you looked under the floor? He's like, we've looked in every possible place. So he doesn't 100% say, yes, we've looked under the floor, that specifically. But he does say, we've looked everywhere in the house. So, I mean, that's what he's saying. Now, she just asked straight up, are you going to arrest anybody soon? And he doesn't comment on that. I didn't expect him to comment on that. She's like, now let's talk about you being an actor. Let's talk about that glow up. And he's like, you know what? Look, 2015, I retired from the LA Police Department. And he wanted to do a second career. He was feeling it. And so he started pursuing acting and singing. And that's where we're seeing all this stuff come up. And he's like, look, you know, I mean, that's been like, it was 2015, 6 years ago, I guess, at this point. You know, it's been a hot minute ago. And he's like, look, a lot of people do other things. Like, they're not just doing their profession or whatever. So, you know, he's trying to put to squash any rumors that he's out here running from audition to audition or whatever the case may be. You know, he's like, that's not the case. You know, I'm not doing that. He was like, look, I still have my SAG card. You know, I mean, it was a thing I did. I'm freely admitting to that. So I thought that was interesting that, you know, he brought that out. Now, also, I think there's a couple of things that are interesting also. And I'm just going to go, this is the sofa sidebar, y'all. Okay, now, even though the whole damn video is allegedly, I mean, this is 100%. This is just me thinking out loud, not that I haven't done that for the last few minutes. Okay, so interesting, because if I was the reporter, when it came down time for all that, this is what I would have said. I would have been like, have you been watching AV's YouTube channel? The first and only damn question. When we were going to address the rumors, I don't care if it's rumor or not, have you been watching that channel? What's the tea? You know, because that right there, so it tells me a couple of things. So I personally think they probably have conversations before they actually do this call, this interview, whatever. And I'm guessing, I mean, y'all correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this is how I think it would go. So they probably do a before thing, or at least an email saying, look, you know, here's the drill. You can ask me A, B, and C, and I'm going to answer this or whatever, you know, but I don't go here. Like, work with me and I'll give you this kind of information type situation. And so I think it would go that way. I could be totally wrong. I think it's interesting that she didn't ask about, have you seen the security footage, like go more in depth with it. So it made me think there might be something there. There might be something there, because I mean, my God, we've all seen it. Overall, I got this vibe. I got the vibe that basically, yeah, he is withholding information. I would expect that. I expect that. There's just a lot of stuff that I'm like, they're not going to put that out there. Number one, he is saying the babies did not walk off from that house on their own. So he is admitting this, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's out there. He is not insinuating that the parents did. In fact, there's very little of that. If the parents, and I'm sorry, the adopted parents are still being open and all that kind of stuff like he's saying, he's not going to scare them off. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to scare them off. He's not going to go out there and be like, yep, you know what? We're about 3 days away from arresting the adoptive parents, but don't tell them that. You know, he's just not going to say it. And so there's also things that he's just not going to say. Now, also, if they're nowhere near an arrest, he's not going to say that either, because then whoever it is could be long gone. But, I mean, 100% they're like, yeah, somebody knows what happened. Somebody knows what happened. But also, if you kind of just read between the lines, it's almost like, yeah, I mean, he's saying they're looking at security footage. Are they seeing another angle that we're not? Like, say, somebody else's house or something. You know, because it would be very interesting to put all that together. This is how I feel. If you have followed the Letitia Stout case, remember how it was like she came out giving that interview and we're all like, oh, hell no. You know. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam. You know, this is what happened, and it was some next level crazy town stuff. I have a feeling that that's what's going to pop off with this. I'm not saying I think it's going to be the person A, B, or C, but I think all of a sudden the cops are going to make their move. Could be a week, could be 2 weeks. And I should say this too. I hope, because what I would be so afraid to see is that it goes cold, everyone just, you know, moves on or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, the biggest thing we hate to see is that, yes, it's confirmed something terrible happened to these boys. You know, we want them to come home, we want them to be safe. You know, in the event that that's not the case, you know, a resolution for those that cared and loved for him and all these people following, you know, to know what happened to the boys, where are the boys. Now look, those are my 2 cents on that interview. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll put AV's channels down there as well, his YouTube channel, if you want to go watch that. He's been doing on the ground stuff. He's been talking to neighbors. He's got stuff out there. And thank you to everybody who's out in California, you know, helping look for this and putting the word out there.